Maria Santos opened her eyes at 6:30 a.m., just like every Tuesday morning. The sun was coming through her bedroom window, making everything look golden and warm. She could hear birds singing outside and the soft sound of her husband Marcus getting ready for work in the bathroom. Life felt perfect in their small house on Maple Street. Marcus walked out of the bathroom wearing his dark blue U.S. Marshal uniform. His badge was shining on his chest and his gun was safely in its holder on his belt. He had been a marshal for 15 years, and Maria was always proud of him. He kept people safe and caught dangerous criminals. Marcus was a good man who believed in doing the right thing. "Good morning, beautiful," Marcus said quietly, kissing Maria on her forehead. She smiled and stretched her arms above her head. Even after 12 years of marriage, he still made her heart feel happy. "Morning, honey. You have that big case today, right?" Maria asked, sitting up in bed. Her long black hair fell around her, shoulders like a waterfall. Marcus nodded. "Yeah, we're trying to catch some bank robbers who have been running from state to state. It might be a long day." He sat on the bed next to her and took her hand. "But I'll be home for dinner. Maybe we can watch a movie with the kids tonight." Maria squeezed his hand. "That sounds perfect. I'll make your favorite chicken and rice." After Marcus left for work, Maria went to wake up their children. Sophia, who was 8 years old, was still sleeping with her teddy bear. David, who was 10, was already awake and reading a book about dinosaurs. Both kids had their father's dark eyes and their mother's warm smile. "Come on, sleepyheads," Maria said cheerfully. "Time for breakfast and school." The kitchen filled with the smell of pancakes and bacon. Sophia and David sat at the small wooden table, talking about their plans for the day. Sophia had art class, which was her favorite. David had a math test that he was worried about. "Don't worry about the test, mijo," Maria told David, using the Spanish word for my son that her own mother had taught her. "You studied hard. Just do your best." Maria worked as a third-grade teacher at Riverside Elementary School. All the children loved her because she was patient and kind. She never yelled at students who made mistakes. Instead, she helped them learn in a way that made sense to them. Teaching was not just her job, it was what she loved to do. After dropping Sophia and David at their school, Maria decided to stop at Miller's grocery store. She wanted to buy ingredients to make Marcus's favorite dinner. He had been working so many long hours lately, and she wanted to do something special for him. The grocery store was busy but not crowded. Maria smiled at Mrs. Johnson, an old lady who lived down the street. She waved at Tom Miller, who owned the store and always asked about her family. Everyone in the neighborhood knew Maria. She had lived there for 3 years, and people respected her because she was always helpful and friendly. Maria bought chicken, rice, tomatoes, and onions. She also picked up some ice cream for the kids as a surprise. As she walked to her car in the parking lot, she felt grateful for her life. She had a loving husband, healthy children, and a job she enjoyed. What more could anyone want? Her car was parked near the back of the lot under a big oak tree that gave good shade. Maria was putting her grocery bags in the trunk when she heard heavy footsteps behind her. "Excuse me, ma'am," a deep voice said. Maria turned around and saw a white police officer walking toward her. He was tall and had angry-looking eyes. His name tag said, Crawford. Maria had never seen him before, but she smiled politely, like she always did when meeting new people. "Yes, officer, how can I help you?" Maria asked in her gentle voice. Officer Crawford stopped about 3 feet away from her. His hand was resting on his gun belt, and he was staring at her like she had done something wrong. "Someone called and said there was a suspicious person in this area," Crawford said. His voice was cold and unfriendly. "You match the description." Maria was confused. She looked around the parking lot. There were other people walking to their cars, but nobody seemed suspicious. She certainly wasn't doing anything wrong. "I'm sorry, officer, but I think there's been a mistake," Maria said calmly. "I was just buying groceries. I live here in the neighborhood on Maple Street." Crawford stepped closer to her. "I need to see some identification," he demanded. "Of course," Maria said. She started to reach for her purse, which was sitting on the passenger seat of her car. "Stop right there," Crawford shouted suddenly. Keep your hands where I can see them. Maria froze. Her heart started beating fast. She didn't understand why the officer was so angry. She was being polite and doing exactly what he asked. I was just getting my driver's license, Maria explained, keeping her hands up in the air. You asked for identification. Other people in the parking lot were starting to notice what was happening. Some of them took out their phones and began recording. Maria felt embarrassed that everyone was looking at her, but she tried to stay calm. Marcus had always taught their children to be respectful to police officers and to do exactly what they said. Turn around and put your hands on the car, Crawford ordered. Maria was shocked. Officer, I think there's been a misunderstanding. I'm a school teacher. I just bought groceries. My husband is a U.S. Marshal. Crawford's face got red with anger. I don't care who your husband is, turn around now. Maria's hands were shaking, but she did what he said. She turned around and put her hands on her car. She could hear people talking and see phone cameras pointed at her. This was like a bad dream. Crawford grabbed her wrist and twisted it behind her back. The pain shot up her arm like fire. Ow, please, you're hurting me, Maria said, trying not to cry. You should have thought about that before you decided to cause trouble, Crawford said, pushing her harder against the car. Maria's head hit the roof of her car. Stars flashed in front of her eyes, and she felt dizzy. Blood started running down her forehead. Please, I have children, she whispered. I have children. I didn't do anything wrong. But Crawford wasn't listening. He forced her to the ground right there in the parking lot. The rough asphalt scraped her knees and hands. Her nice white shirt, the one Marcus said made her look like an angel, was getting dirty and torn. People were yelling at Crawford to stop, but he didn't care. He put his knee on Maria's back, making it hard for her to breathe. I can't breathe, Maria gasped. Please, I can't breathe. The whole terrible scene was being recorded on at least 6 different phones. Later, these videos would be seen by millions of people all over the country. But right now, Maria just wanted it to stop. She wanted to go home to her family. She wanted this nightmare to end. But it was just beginning. Marcus Santos was standing in a small office downtown, looking at photos of bank robbers on the wall. His team had been tracking these criminals for 3 weeks. They had robbed 5 banks in different states and always managed to escape before police arrived. Today was the day they would finally catch them. His partner, Agent Rodriguez, was drinking coffee and studying a map. I think they'll hit the First National Bank on Oak Street next, Rodriguez said. It fits their pattern. Marcus nodded. He was good at his job because he paid attention to details. After 15 years as a U.S. Marshal, he could predict what criminals would do before they did it. But today, something felt different. He had a strange feeling in his stomach, like something bad was going to happen. His phone rang at exactly 11:47 a.m. The number on the screen belonged to his neighbor, Mrs. Peterson. Marcus thought this was strange. Mrs. Peterson never called him during work hours unless it was an emergency. Hello, Mrs. Peterson? Marcus answered. Marcus, thank God. You answered. Mrs. Peterson's voice was shaking. Something terrible happened to Maria. She's at Memorial Hospital. You need to come right now. Marcus felt like the room was spinning around him. His strong hands started shaking, and he could barely hold the phone. What happened? Is she okay? Marcus asked, his voice getting louder. A police officer hurt her at the grocery store. It's all over the internet. People recorded it with their phones. Marcus, it's really bad. Rodriguez saw Marcus's face change from calm to scared to angry in just a few seconds. He had never seen his partner look like this before. I have to go, Marcus told Rodriguez, grabbing his car keys. Maria's in the hospital. Rodriguez didn't ask questions. He just said, Go. I'll handle things here. Marcus drove to Memorial Hospital faster than he had ever driven before. His mind was full of terrible thoughts. What if Maria was seriously hurt? What if she was dying? What if he never got to tell her he loved her again? At the hospital, Marcus ran through the hallways until he found Maria's room. When he saw her lying in the hospital bed, his heart broke into a million pieces. Maria's beautiful face was swollen and bruised. There was a big bandage on her forehead where her head had hit the car. Her hands were scraped up from the rough parking lot. Her eyes, which were usually bright and happy, looked sad and scared. "Marcus," Maria whispered when she saw him. Tears started running down her cheeks. Marcus sat on the edge of the bed and gently took her hand. He was trying not to cry, but it was hard. His wife, the kindest person he knew, looked like she had been in a car accident. "What did they do to you, mi amor?" Marcus asked softly, using the Spanish words for "my love." Maria told him everything that happened. She spoke slowly because her head hurt. She told him how Officer Crawford had treated her like a criminal even though she was just buying groceries. She told him how he had thrown her to the ground in front of everyone. "The worst part," Maria said, her voice breaking, "was when people were recording it. I kept thinking about Sophia and David. What if they see those videos? What if other kids at school make fun of them?" Marcus felt anger building up inside him like a fire. He had spent his whole career believing that police officers were the good guys. He had taught his children to respect and trust the police. Now, one bad officer had hurt his family and shaken everything Marcus believed in. Dr. Williams, the doctor taking care of Maria, came into the room. She was a kind woman with gray hair and gentle eyes. "Your wife has a concussion, 3 bruised ribs and multiple cuts and scrapes," Dr. Williams explained. "She needs to rest for at least a week. The head injury is our biggest concern right now." Marcus nodded, but inside he was thinking about much more than Maria's physical injuries. He was thinking about how this would affect her emotionally. Maria was a gentle person who always saw the good in everyone. How would this change her? After the doctor left, Marcus's phone started ringing nonstop. News reporters had found out that the woman in the viral video was married to a U.S. Marshal. Everyone wanted to interview Marcus and ask him what he planned to do. Marcus turned off his phone. Right now, the only thing that mattered was taking care of Maria. A police detective named Johnson came to the hospital that evening. He was a short man with a fake smile who seemed nervous about talking to Marcus. "Mr. Santos, I'm investigating. What happened to your wife?" Detective Johnson said. "Officer Crawford says your wife was acting suspicious and resisted arrest. He had to use force to control the situation." Marcus stared at Detective Johnson like he was crazy. "Did you watch the videos? My wife weighs 120 pounds. She's an elementary school teacher. She wasn't resisting anything." "Well, these situations can be complicated," Johnson said, still smiling his fake smile. "Sometimes videos don't show the whole story." Marcus stood up slowly. He was much taller than Detective Johnson, and his voice became very cold and serious. "Detective, let me make something very clear. I am a federal law enforcement officer. I know what police brutality looks like. I know what a proper arrest looks like. And I know what a cover-up looks like. What happened to my wife was not complicated. It was criminal." Detective Johnson's fake smile disappeared. He left the hospital room quickly. That night, Marcus sat next to Maria's bed, holding her hand while she slept. The pain medicine made her sleep deeply, but she still looked uncomfortable. Every few minutes, she would make small sounds like she was having bad dreams. Marcus made a decision that night that would change everything. He was not just going to file a complaint and hope the local police department would do the right thing. He was not going to trust Detective Johnson or anyone else in that police department. Marcus was a U.S. Marshal. He had resources, connections, and knowledge that most people didn't have. He knew how to investigate crimes, how to build cases, and how to make sure justice was served. Officer Crawford had made a big mistake. He had hurt the wrong person's wife. He had attacked the family of someone who knew exactly how to fight back. Marcus kissed Maria's forehead gently and whispered, "I promise you, mi amor, this won't go unpunished. Crawford is going to pay for what he did to you." Outside the hospital room, Marcus could hear nurses talking quietly about the videos that were spreading all over social media. The whole country was starting to learn about what happened to Maria Santos, but they had no idea what her husband was planning to do about it. Marcus took 3 weeks off from work to take care of Maria and plan his next moves. Every morning he made breakfast for Sophia and David, drove them to school, and then came home to help Maria with her medicine and doctor appointments. But while he was being a caring husband and father, His mind was working like a detective. Marcus had a small office in their basement, where he kept his work files and computer. After Maria fell asleep each afternoon, he would go downstairs and start making phone calls. He was building a case against Officer Crawford, but he was doing it the smart way. The first call Marcus made was to his friend Agent Sarah Chen from the FBI. Sarah worked in the Civil Rights Division in Washington, D.C. She investigated police officers who broke the law and violated people's rights. "Sarah, I need your help," Marcus said when she answered the phone. "A local cop attacked my wife, and I have proof." Sarah had known Marcus for 8 years. They had worked together on several cases, and she respected him as a good agent and an honest man. "Send me everything you have," Sarah said immediately. "If a police officer hurt Maria, we're going to make sure he pays for it." Marcus sent Sarah all the cell phone videos of Maria's attack. He also sent her photos of Maria's injuries and copies of her medical records. Within 2 hours, Sarah called him back. "Marcus, this is one of the clearest cases of police brutality I've ever seen," Sarah said, her voice full of anger. "Your wife did absolutely nothing wrong. This Crawford guy is going to prison." But Marcus wanted more than just one case against Crawford. He wanted to find out if Crawford had hurt other people too. So he started investigating Crawford's history as a police officer. Marcus drove to the courthouse and looked up all the lawsuits that had been filed against the police department in the past 5 years. He spent hours reading through legal documents, taking notes and making copies of important papers. What Marcus found made him sick to his stomach. Officer Crawford had been sued 6 different times for using too much force against people. All 6 victims were Black or Hispanic, just like Maria. The police department had paid money to settle these cases quietly, without admitting Crawford did anything wrong. Marcus found the names and addresses of Crawford's other victims. One was a teenager named Kevin who had been beaten during a traffic stop. Another was an old man named Mr. Garcia, who had been hurt when Crawford arrested him for asking questions about a parking ticket. Marcus decided to visit these people and ask them to tell their stories. The first person he visited was Kevin, who was now 19 years old and worked at a car repair shop. "Nobody believed me when I said that cop beat me up for no reason," Kevin told Marcus, rolling up his sleeve to show old scars on his arm. "My mom wanted to sue, but we didn't have money for a lawyer." "Well, now you do," Marcus said. "I'm going to make sure everyone knows what Crawford has been doing." Mr. Garcia was 72 years old and lived in a small apartment with his wife. When Marcus showed him the video of Maria's attack, the old man started crying. "That's exactly what he did to me," Mr. Garcia said. "He threw me on the ground just like that. My wife was so scared she had a heart attack the next day." Marcus collected statements from all of Crawford's victims. He recorded their stories on his phone and took pictures of their old injuries. By the end of the week, Marcus had proof that Crawford had been hurting innocent people for years. The local police department was starting to realize they had a big problem. The videos of Maria's attack had been watched by millions of people online. News reporters from all over the country were calling and asking questions. Civil rights groups were planning protests. Police Chief Anderson called a meeting with all his supervisors. He was a fat man with a red face who was more worried about his job than about justice. "This Santos situation is getting out of hand," Chief Anderson said. "The FBI is asking questions and the mayor is breathing down my neck. We need to control this story." Detective Johnson, who had tried to lie to Marcus at the hospital, suggested they claim Maria had been acting crazy and Crawford was just doing his job. "That won't work," said Captain Miller, who was smarter than the others. "There are too many videos. Everyone can see that woman didn't do anything wrong. Crawford screwed up big time." Meanwhile, Marcus was making more phone calls. He contacted a lawyer named David Washington, who was famous for winning cases against corrupt police officers. Washington agreed to represent Maria for free because her case was so strong. Marcus also called reporters from major newspapers and television stations. He gave them copies of all the evidence he had collected about Crawford's history of violence. Soon, the story was not just about one attack on Maria, but about years of abuse that the police department had covered up. The pressure on the police department was growing every day. Protesters marched in front of the police station carrying signs that said "Justice for Maria" and "Fire Crawford now." The mayor received hundreds of phone calls from angry citizens demanding action, but Marcus wasn't finished yet. He had one more powerful card to play. Marcus called his supervisor at the U.S. Marshal Service, Director Patricia Kim. She was a tough woman who had worked her way up through the ranks and didn't tolerate corruption or injustice. Director Kim, I need to request that the Marshal Service officially support the FBI investigation into my wife's case, Marcus said. You have it, Director Kim said without hesitation. What Crawford did was not just an attack on your family. It was an attack on all law enforcement officers who do their jobs honestly. We're going to make sure he never wears a badge again. The FBI, the U.S. Marshal Service, and major news organizations all investigating Crawford. The local police department could no longer protect him. Chief Anderson was forced to suspend Crawford without pay while the investigation continued. Marcus visited Maria in their bedroom, where she was resting and slowly getting better. Her bruises were starting to heal, but Marcus could see that the emotional damage would take longer to fix. How are you feeling today, mi amor? Marcus asked, sitting on the bed next to her. Maria smiled at him, but her smile was different now. It was sadder, more careful than before. I feel better physically, Maria said. But I keep thinking about what happened. I keep wondering why that officer hated me so much when he didn't even know me. Marcus took her hand gently. Crawford is going to pay for what he did to you. I promise you that. And we're going to make sure he can never hurt anyone else. That night, Marcus got a phone call from Agent Chen at the FBI. Marcus, you need to know something, Sarah said. We found out that Crawford has been making racist comments on social media for years. He also belongs to some very bad groups online. This wasn't just police brutality. This was a hate crime. Marcus felt his anger growing even stronger. Crawford hadn't just attacked Maria because he was a bad cop. He had attacked her because he was a racist who hated people like Marcus's family. But now Marcus had all the evidence he needed to destroy Crawford's life, just like Crawford had tried to destroy theirs. Officer Daniel Crawford was sitting in his dirty apartment, drinking beer and watching the news. For the past month, his face had been on television almost every day. The reporters called him the brutal cop who attacked an innocent teacher. Crawford was angry that everyone was making him look like the bad guy. His phone had been ringing all morning, but Crawford didn't want to answer it. His lawyer, his friends, and even his own mother kept calling to ask what he was going to do. Crawford didn't know what to tell them. The doorbell rang at 2:00 p.m. Crawford looked through the window and saw two people in dark suits standing on his porch. His heart started beating fast. He knew they were FBI agents even before they showed him their badges. Daniel Crawford, you are under arrest for violating the civil rights of Maria Santos, said Agent Chen, holding up handcuffs. You have the right to remain silent. Crawford's hands were shaking as they put the handcuffs on him. His neighbors came out of their houses to watch as the FBI agents put him in their car. Mrs. Rodriguez, who lived next door, was recording everything with her phone. This is all a big mistake, Crawford shouted as they drove away. But deep down, he knew his life was over. At the FBI office, Crawford sat in a small room with his lawyer, Mr. Thompson. Thompson was an expensive lawyer who usually helped rich people get out of trouble. But even he looked worried. Daniel, the evidence against you is very strong, Thompson said quietly. They have videos, witness statements, medical records, and proof that you've done this before. The best thing we can do is try to make a deal. What kind of deal? Crawford asked. You confess to what you did and maybe get 5 years in prison instead of 10, Thompson explained. Crawford slammed his fist on the table. I'm not confessing to anything. That woman was asking for trouble. Agent Chen was watching Crawford through a one-way mirror. She had interrogated many criminals, and she could tell that Crawford still didn't understand how much trouble he was in. Meanwhile, at the police station, Chief Anderson was having the worst day of his career. The FBI had taken all of Crawford's files and computer. They were also investigating other officers who had helped cover up Crawford's previous attacks. Detective Johnson, who had tried to lie to Marcus at the hospital, was called into the chief's office. Johnson was sweating and looked very nervous. Johnson, the FBI wants to talk to you about the Santos case, Chief Anderson said. They know you tried to protect Crawford. Chief, I was just following orders, Johnson said, his voice shaking. You told me to make this go away quietly. Chief Anderson's face turned red. I never told you to lie to a federal agent. You did that on your own. The truth was that both men were guilty of trying to cover up Crawford's crime. Now they were, turning against each other to save themselves. At the same time, Marcus was at home helping Maria prepare for something very important. Tomorrow she would speak at a big community meeting about police violence. Maria was scared, but she knew it was the right thing to do. What if I start crying when I talk? Maria asked Marcus, looking at herself in the bathroom mirror. The bruises on her face were almost gone, but she still felt different inside. Then you cry, Marcus said, putting his hands on her shoulders. People need to see what Crawford did to you. Your story will help other families who went through the same thing. That evening, Marcus got a phone call from Kevin, the young man who had been beaten by Crawford 2 years earlier. Mr. Santos, I saw on the news that Crawford got arrested, Kevin said, his voice full of excitement. Is it really true? Is he really going to prison? Yes, Kevin. The FBI has enough evidence to put him away for a long time, Marcus answered. Kevin started crying on the phone. I never thought this day would come. I thought he would keep hurting people forever. The next day, the community meeting was held at St. Mary's Church. More than 500 people came to show support for Maria and other victims of police violence. News cameras were everywhere. Maria walked to the front of the church, with Marcus holding her hand. She looked out at all the faces looking back at her. Some people were crying already. My name is Maria Santos, she began, her voice quiet but strong. 6 weeks ago, I was just a teacher and a mother buying groceries for my family. I never imagined that a police officer would attack me for no reason. As Maria told her story, people in the church started getting angry. They shouted things like, "That's not right," and "Justice for Maria." When Maria described how Crawford had thrown her to the ground, several women started crying. The worst part, Maria continued, was feeling helpless. I kept thinking that if this could happen to me, it could happen to anyone. But then I realized something important. I'm not helpless. I have a voice. And I'm going to use it to make sure Crawford can never hurt another family. The crowd stood up and clapped for Maria for almost 5 minutes. Marcus felt so proud of his wife. She was braver than any criminal he had ever chased. After the meeting, a reporter asked Marcus what he thought would happen to Crawford. Crawford is going to federal prison, Marcus said, looking directly into the camera. He's going to learn that when you attack an innocent person, there are consequences, especially when that person's husband knows how the justice system really works. The next week, more bad news came for Crawford. The FBI had found his social media accounts where he had written horrible things about Black and Hispanic people. They also discovered that he belonged to racist groups online. Agent Chen called Marcus with an update. Marcus, we're adding hate crime charges to Crawford's case. This wasn't just police brutality. Crawford attacked your wife because of her race. Marcus felt angry all over again, but he also felt satisfied. Crawford was going to face the most serious charges possible. Crawford's lawyer, Mr. Thompson, met with him one more time. Daniel, the government is offering you one last deal, Thompson said. Plead guilty to all charges and get 8 years in prison. If you go to trial and lose, you could get 15 years. Crawford looked at his lawyer with hate in his eyes. This is all that Marshal's fault. He should have minded his own business. Thompson shook his head. Daniel, you attacked that man's wife. What did you expect him to do? Just forget about it? For the first time since his arrest, Crawford began to understand the truth. He had picked the wrong family to mess with. Marcus Santos wasn't just any husband. He was a federal law enforcement officer with the skills, connections, and determination to fight back. Crawford finally realized that his life as a police officer was over. His reputation was destroyed. His career was finished. And soon, he would be wearing prison clothes instead of a police uniform. The hunter had become the hunted, and there was no escape. The courthouse was packed on the day of Crawford's trial. Marcus arrived early with Maria, holding her hand as they walked through the crowd of reporters and supporters. Maria was wearing a blue dress that Marcus had bought for her, the same color as his Marshal uniform. She wanted Crawford to see that she was strong and unafraid. Crawford sat at the defendant's table wearing an orange jail uniform instead of his police badge. His expensive lawyer, Mr. Thompson, looked defeated before the trial even started. The evidence against Crawford was so strong that everyone knew he would be found guilty. Judge Patricia Williams was a black woman who had been a judge for 20 years. She was known for being fair but tough, especially with criminals who abused their power. When Crawford looked at her, she stared back at him with cold, serious eyes. "Mr. Crawford," Judge Williams said, "you are charged with violating the civil rights of Maria Santos, assault under color of authority, filing false police reports, and committing a hate crime. How do you plead?" Crawford's lawyer had begged him to plead guilty and accept a deal for 8 years in prison. But Crawford was too proud and stupid to admit what he had done. "Not guilty," Crawford said in a quiet voice. Marcus squeezed Maria's hand. Crawford was going to make this harder than it needed to be, but that was fine with Marcus. Now, everyone would hear the full truth about what kind of person Crawford really was. The prosecutor, Ms. Janet Rodriguez, was one of the best lawyers in the federal government. She had won cases against corrupt police officers before, and she was determined to win this one too. "Ladies and gentlemen of the jury," Ms. Rodriguez said during her opening statement, "Daniel Crawford attacked Maria Santos not because she broke any law, but because he is a racist who hates people who look different from him. The evidence will show that Mr. Crawford has been a dangerous criminal hiding behind a police badge." For 3 days, the jury watched the videos of Crawford attacking Maria over and over again. They heard testimony from Maria, from the witnesses who saw the attack, and from Crawford's other victims. Kevin testified about how Crawford had beaten him during a traffic stop. Mr. Garcia told how Crawford had hurt him and caused his wife to have a heart attack. The most powerful moment came when Maria took the witness stand. She looked directly at Crawford as she told her story. "I was taught to respect police officers," Maria said, her voice clear and strong. "I taught my children to trust them and obey them. But Mr. Crawford didn't deserve that respect. He used his badge to hurt innocent people, and he needs to face the consequences." Crawford's lawyer tried to defend him by saying that police work was dangerous and officers sometimes had to use force. But the videos made it clear that Maria had never threatened Crawford or resisted arrest. When Agent Chen testified about Crawford's racist social media posts, several jury members looked disgusted. Crawford had written terrible things about Black and Hispanic people, calling them animals and saying they deserved to be hurt. The most shocking evidence came when the FBI showed Crawford's connections to white supremacist groups online. He had been sharing hateful messages and talking about how he wanted to teach minorities a lesson while on duty. Marcus watched Crawford's face during the trial. The former police officer looked smaller and weaker every day. His arrogant attitude was disappearing as he realized that his lies weren't working. On the final day of the trial, Crawford's lawyer made one last desperate attempt to save him. "My client made mistakes," Mr. Thompson told the jury. "But he's not a monster. He was just doing his job the way he was trained." Ms. Rodriguez stood up for her closing argument and pointed directly at Crawford. "Daniel Crawford is exactly what he appears to be, a racist criminal who used his police badge to hurt innocent people. Maria Santos was shopping for groceries to make dinner for her family. She did nothing wrong. Crawford attacked her because he hates people like her, and because he thought no one would stop him. Well, someone did stop him. Justice stopped him. The jury took only 90 minutes to find Crawford guilty on all charges. When the verdict was read, Crawford's legs gave out and he collapsed in his chair. Maria started crying, but this time, they were tears of relief and joy. 2 weeks later, Crawford stood before Judge Williams for sentencing. The courtroom was full again, with Maria's supporters on one side and Crawford's family on the other. "Mr. Crawford," Judge Williams said, "you have been found guilty of serious crimes that strike at the heart of justice in America. Police officers are supposed to protect people, not hurt them. You used your badge to commit hate crimes against innocent citizens." Judge Williams sentenced Crawford to 12 years in federal prison. He would also never be allowed to work as a police officer again anywhere in the United States. I hope you use your time in prison to think about the pain you caused to Mrs. Santos and your other victims, the judge said. When you get out, you will be an old man with nothing but regret. Crawford was led away in handcuffs. He never looked back at Maria or apologized for what he had done. After the sentencing, Marcus and Maria stood on the courthouse steps talking to reporters. Maria looked confident and peaceful for the first time since the attack. Today, justice was served, Maria said to the cameras. But this isn't just about my family. This is about making sure that bad police officers can't hurt innocent people anymore. Marcus put his arm around his wife. My wife is the strongest person I know. She turned a terrible experience into something positive that will help other families. The city paid Maria $3 million to settle her lawsuit against the police department. But more importantly, the police department was forced to make major changes. They had to fire several officers who had helped cover up Crawford's crimes. They also had to create new training programs and hire a civilian review board to investigate complaints against officers. Marcus and Maria used some of their settlement money to start the Santos Family Foundation. The foundation helped other victims of police violence hire good lawyers and get justice. Marcus used his law enforcement experience to teach the foundation's lawyers how to build strong cases against corrupt officers. 6 months after Crawford went to prison, Maria returned to teaching at Riverside Elementary School. Her students and fellow teachers welcomed her back as a hero. She had shown everyone that one person could stand up to injustice and win. Sophia and David, now 9 and 11 years old, were proud of their parents. They understood that their mother had been hurt by a bad police officer, but they also saw how their father had used his skills to get justice. "Daddy," Sophia asked one day, "are you going to catch more bad guys like Crawford?" Marcus smiled at his daughter. "Every day, mija, that's what good people do. We protect each other from the bad guys." Maria had learned that she was stronger than she ever imagined. Marcus had learned that sometimes the most important cases are the ones that are personal. And Crawford had learned that when you hurt innocent people, justice will eventually find you. The Santos family was whole again, and they had made their community a better, safer place for everyone.